Hi everyone. We got everyone from tutorial one. We went over a little bit in the tutorial. As you'll see in the late night tutorial, we have a bit of a get to know you exercise. So that took up a large chunk, but I wanted to get through the tutorial exercise as well. So apparently I had some lag issues in the tutorial. So please just let me know if that happens tonight, because we're going to be going through our assessment one and then our lecture material. So if there's any issues, do let me know if I need to repeat myself, because it's all kind of important stuff. I think it might just be this time of night. Although we didn't have any issues last week, it seemed to run pretty smoothly. But anyway, such are the mysteries of the internet these days. Okay. Well, I think maybe we should talk about assessment one before we get into the lecture material. We've got some really interesting stuff to look at in the lecture material tonight, looking at different research methods that you can use to come up with your insights about your customer. So I said last week that I don't expect you to use boring traditional methods of research. I want you to come up with fresh, entertaining insights about the consumer, and to do that, you've got to come up with fresh, entertaining methods to get those insights. So I'll give you lots of ways you can do that tonight. All right, let's go to our okay, so you should be able to see my screen now. All right, so let's go to assessment. Here we go. Actually, I think I've got. Okay, so first assessment is consumer insight. Due Friday, the 21st of August, week 5, 11:59 p.m., worth 25%. And we'll look at the overview first. No, I don't know if you can see that. All right, so what can you guys see on my screen now? Can you see the Blackboard site with the assessment one? Is that what you're looking at? You can? All right. It'll work out some way I can toggle. Where is? Can't find the. Oh, your beautiful faces are covering up the taskbar at the bottom, so I'll just have to move you. Okay. Okay, that should be it now. All right, should be able to see that now. Okay, let's take a look through this. Okay, so assessment one. As I said last week, each assessment mirrors our learning module, and our first one is strategy. So that's really what we're concentrating on for the first one. And it's all about applying the planning cycle that we saw in the lecture last week. So where are we now? Why are we there? Where could we be? How do we get there? And are we getting there? So assessment one is testing your handle on strategy, and it's looking at the where are we now and why are we there part of the planning cycle. So be doing a situation analysis on the client, and if you've had a look at the assignment, it's for the Good Beer Company, which is a Brisbane-based philanthropic beer brewer. We'll have a look at them in a second. And then you're going to provide some research leading to a situation analysis. And from that, you're also going to provide a consumer insight. So you're going to do some secondary research and some primary research. You'll generate a consumer insight. You'll rationalize and justify that consumer insight. And that's your assessment 1. Okay, so assessment 2 will then be extending that. You'll be doing a creative strategy for the same client. So just extending the work that you've done based on the feedback on assessment 2. You can either come up with a new insight, or you continue to develop a strategy based on the insight you've come up with for assessment 1, if you're confident with it and you've gotten good feedback from myself. Then you're looking at, where could we be? So this is developing a strategy and how to get there. Okay, so our developing our objectives as well. So you'll be defining an advertising problem that a campaign could solve. You'll be coming up with advertising objectives to measure our strategies against, and then you'll be articulating a strategy for it, target consumer, message strategy, all that kind of stuff. All right, so here's our CRA for assessment 1. You'll be have to provide some kind of secondary research. Now you can use journals, you can use industry websites, social media is valid as well. Anything that is pre-existing, this isn't something that's initiated by yourself. You can also use some form of primary or qualitative research. So we don't want you to do surveys. Please do not do that. What we're looking at is something like a focus group or some kind of technique, and I'll give you lots of those tonight, some really interesting left of center techniques to help you with insight mining. So to come up with some kind of fresh, original take on the product or the brand through the consumer's thoughts and feelings about it. And then you'll define a consumer insight, and I'll take you through that again tonight, what an insight actually is. And then the other part of your marking is your professional communication. Okay, so your structure, your spelling, your grammar, and your ability to articulate and rationalize your choices. So research the product, the competition, and the consumer using existing sources. Okay, so you can look up, there's quite a few articles at the moment about the Good Beer Company. One came out the other day, so I'll leave that up to you to go hunting on the web for that. So you can use academic journal articles, you can use industry publications like Ad News or B&T, online databases, and online sources like Mumbrella. Now, you're also, as I said, welcome to use social media, because I think that's one of the large, one of the most relevant and rich places you can get secondary research. So don't forget to go to the basics, the brand's Instagram, their Facebook page, but also don't forget to look at what their competitors are doing. Do some form of primary qualitative research as well. So you could do a couple of in-depth interviews with a typical consumer. You could do a focus group. Now they could be, it could be a triad, like just 3 people or 4 people, or you can do one of the techniques that I'll go through in the lecture tonight. A brand obituary, get a consumer to do a brand obituary or a bio, or get them to do sentence completion, or take photos of their interaction with beers, and then you discern an insight from there. But I'll take you through all those in a second. Don't do a survey. It's just too fiddly, and they don't really give you the level of insight that we want. Then develop your consumer insight, and I'll take you through what a consumer insight is again. Based on your research, develop a consumer insight. So this should be a statement of the consumer's needs, desires, and aspirations. Their hot button that will most likely turn them onto the product. All right. So a way to think about an insight is this: what is something unique, distinctive, and fresh about the way the consumer thinks, feels, or behaves in relation to the brand, the product category, or their competition? And we'll go into some more examples in a second. So it's really an insight is an insight into someone's mind and behavior and thoughts, their soul. Okay, so it's getting into the psychology of the behavior of the target market. And then there's your 5 marks for your communication. So this includes your rationale, that is your justification of why your insight is correct and why it's a compelling insight. Okay, so it's a rationale or a justification of your choices. And it also includes referencing and taking into account any spelling or grammatical or punctuation errors. Okay, so worth 25%, 1,200 words. Yeah, there's always a bit of leeway over or under. Due week 5 and submit by the Blackboard link. All right, so let's take a look at the actual brief itself. I'll stop the share. All right. There we go. Okay, so here's the brief. Some of you probably had a look. That should be the Good Beer Company. I'll just change that. GBC. Crumpler was last year. Okay, so it's the Good Beer Company. The brand for your first 2 assessments this semester is the Australian brand, the Good Beer Company. We'll go. You can click around on the website and have a look at it. It's gearing up for expansion following a major rebranding. They've recently just done redone all their logos and packaging. It's been around for a few years, but 2019, early 2020, they just rebranded. So great time to seize that and take it into the wider market. So the question you've got to answer over the next couple of assessments is this: what's the best way to expand the current Australian market and capture a new global market? So concentrate on developing an ad campaign in small steps. First step is just using research to find an insight. Next step in assessment 2 is to articulate a strategy and coming up with a big idea. For the Good Beer Company and for the Australian market, while understanding that it should have potential to develop future global ad campaigns. Some recent articles to give you an idea of recent brand growth ideas and initiatives that the Good Beer Company has been involved with. So they're basically a company that they're a craft beer brewing company, but they get involved with social causes. So they've done one for drought relief. They're doing one for helping workers that are suffering from COVID. They take on a social cause, and a certain percentage of their profits is donated back to the community through charitable and socially active causes. They also did one called the Great Barrier Beer, where proceeds, a certain amount of proceeds went to helping save the Great Barrier Reef. So take a look at the kind of campaigns they've done and the beers they've made, and have a think about what is, eventually, what's a new direction you could take them in. What's a new cause, a current cause that they haven't thought about? Okay, yeah. So it should be a good, fun, exciting one for you. Plenty of articles that I've put in there. You can click through and have a look at as well. All right, and we'll just have a look at one last thing before we leap into the lecture material. All right, so this is also on Blackboard. I stole this from ad campaigns, which is the culminating subject in the advertising strand. But I brought it across so that you can use some of this, because this is something that we show the creative strategists over there. So just ignore anything that's got nothing to do with this subject. So some of this stuff is relative to ad campaigns.amn423, but I just want you to really concentrate on these slides, how to get insights. Okay, so defining insight. The question was asked, define insight, and the discussion went for months and months, and there's more than that. There's thousands of definitions now. So a way to think of an insight is a wow, it's a click, it's a light bulb moment, it's the unknown, it's depth, it's an idea, it's intuition, it's connection, it's resonance, some way that a consumer has an in and a click into a brand, okay, connection to a brand. So it's a penetrating, discerning understanding that unlocks an opportunity for a brand, something in the consumer's psyche and their behavior, their thoughts, that will help us connect to the brand. So there's got to be truth. It's got to be truthful. You just can't make something up. There's got to be a brand truth. And there's got to be truth that the consumer recognizes about themselves and the brand that it connects with them. There's got to be some form of understanding about the consumer's life. And then there's this magical thing called inspiration. There's that, again, it's the X factor that I can't help you with that part, but certainly through research and strategization, you can discern some kind of truth or come up with some kind of understanding about their target market and their relation to the brand. All right. So yeah, here's an example of insight. The insight that eating is not just about people sitting around a table face to face, that eating is everywhere now. People is, it's cooking at a barbecue, it's eating at your desk, it's eating in the car, it's getting takeaway. It's evolved from the traditional idea of eating together as a family. So here's an example of Alpen. So rather than taking your lunch on a bus, just get a bar. Okay, so there's an insight that people need to eat when they're on the run. So rather than taking an actual meal in a bus, get it in bar form. It's convenient, it's cleaner, it's easy to digest. Okay, so there you go. The idea that you can eat on the run, that's the insight. People need to eat when they're on the go, and they're not at a table anymore. They are in a bus, they're in a car, you should be driving and eating. They're in lifts while they're chowing down a bar. So again, using an insight to come up with a brand idea, brand connection. So the insight is that one thing, the one thing that connects our consumer to the brand through their daily life. Okay, so that one thing can come from these things. We have our customer insight. What's our insight into our customer, the way that they live their life? The client insight. So what's something about the actual brand itself that it can provide and connect with that aspect of the consumer's lifestyle? And then is there something in our competitors? Okay, is there something our competitors aren't doing that we can take advantage of? And in the lecture tonight, I'll show you the Tide campaign that I just think does a brilliant job of discerning this one thing, a key insight that enabled them to seize control of a particular creative direction that no one else had seized upon. And it was a mix of customer insight, client insight, and competitive insight. And we'll have a look at that later tonight. Okay, so Sara Lee Ice Cream, their one thing was the idea of making people emotionally connect to ice cream. So there's an insight that, people, when they are down, they crave sugar, they crave comfort food. So people have an emotional connection to dessert, not just a rational one. Okay, McDonald's has traded on this for a few years too. That I love Macca's is about the emotional connection we have with McDonald's, not a rational one. So they turn that into their creative theme. Love is a many flavored thing. Okay, that people don't just eat ice cream; they love ice cream. That there's an emotional connection when they're eating. People are emotional eaters, not just rational eaters. Run through all this. Okay, so you've got you've got 2 days to live. It's just a dramatic way of just saying that people are weekend warriors. They really charge into the weekend, and so make the most of it. The Weekend Herald is the way to tell you all about what's happening on the weekend and how to live your life to the fullest. All right, so there's a little insight that people work all week, but they live for the weekend. And what's the connection with the Weekend Herald? What can it do for them on the weekend? Well, it tells you what's on what's happening, what to watch, what books to read, all that kind of stuff, how to make the most of your weekend. So a great connection of insight, behavior, and consumer, and what the brand can actually do. All right, so that inspiration provides us with our competitive advantage. It gives us distinction in the market, and that's why this is why we have a competitor analysis, to make sure we can see what our competitors are doing. Is there anything that they haven't seized upon that we can grab hold of and use for our campaign? Okay, so the difference between learnings and insights. Okay, insights transform facts into feelings. So this is your job as a creative strategist, as a consumer planner, is to not just grab the facts, but then turn it into something that's usable and transformable. All right. So you might find out that, for example, I think we looked at Got Milk last week. Maybe we didn't. Maybe I'm confusing it with the copywriting subject. The fact that people wash down in the Got Milk campaigns, the fact that people used milk to wash down cakes and muffins and snacky treats, they transform that into the feelings of what it's like when they run out of milk. And if you haven't seen the Got Milk campaign, I'll show it to you in a second. The Michael Bay one and the creepy Halloween kid, and how they took a product fact that they found out. People were lying, saying that they drank milk for nutritional value. They actually drank it to wash down snacks and treats and cookies and muffins. But then they turned that into the feeling of being frustrated when you haven't got any milk. And that's where the Got Milk campaign came from. So we'll have a look at that as well tonight. Okay. Anyway, so any questions about assessment 1 before we get into the lecture material for tonight? All right. So tonight I'll give you like a little bit of a sample, or many samples and options of some of these left of center research options you can use. All right. I think this is right. Yep, this is the right one. Good. Okay, so a little bit about planning. As I said last week, you've got to become a bit of a behavioral scientist and a bit of a detective in this subject. And that's what tonight's lecture is all about. This is what assessment 1 is all about. That insight mining, peeling back the layers, interpreting what people are saying to get to the truth behind people's thoughts and behaviors around a product. So consumer planning is like psychiatry. It's about understanding and interpreting those connections between the brand and the consumer, because the consumer so often won't tell you the truth as to why they buy something. And as I said last week, they often don't know the reason themselves. So you have to interpret it for them. Planning is storytelling. So one of the things we'll be looking at this semester is the idea of brand narratives and brand stories. You try to find patterns and meaning and try to turn complex concepts into something simple for our consumers. And that's what stories are. That's what myths are. It's a way of making sense of the chaos and the randomness of the universe, taking complex ideas and turning them into easily digestible stories. So we'll be looking tonight at brand archetypes and introducing the concept of brand storytelling as well. So it's futuristic, not just thinking about what is, but what's going to happen 6 weeks down the track, 6 months down the track, 6 years down the track. It's also maternal. It's about nurturing and protecting those small ideas that we're going to grow into better ones. So this is why you need to learn how to not just articulate an idea, but rationalize and justify it as well. Get it through the gauntlet of attack from the client and many other areas. Okay, now this is important too. Thinkers provoke. That's one of the things we looked at last week. It's an old school thing to simply accept the brief. You've got to challenge brand conventions. You've got to challenge the way the client thinks about the brand, okay? And challenging the brief and asking questions going against the grain is very important in this. So this is why I'll be giving you these very left of center techniques for coming up with insights. All right, so the old style planner, yep, you got the brief, you just accepted what everyone thinks they know about the brand or the category conventions. That, you know, four-wheel drives are for driving in muddy mountainous terrains, for example. Okay, you present the strategic solutions, you go away, you do your magic, you come back, the client is locked out, the consumer isn't really consulted, the gurus do their job. That's the old style of doing it. The new style of thinking, as we saw last week, it's all about questioning and challenging the brief, challenging brand conventions, okay? Looking at how people actually use their cars. You still see examples of it, but these days people have accepted that four-wheel drives aren't just for driving off-road. We're suddenly seeing, lo and behold, ads for four-wheel drives of people driving them in the city, because that's how people are actually using it, picking the kids up from soccer. Once upon a time, people would tell you, oh no, I use it. We drive a four-wheel drive because we like to go for Fraser Island, or we drive in the mountains. When in reality, yes, they are driving the kids to soccer, and eventually ads started to reflect that truth, even though the consumer didn't want to admit it. So yes, strategic options are discussed in the project room. Creative and media are involved throughout. The client is consulted all the way through the process. The consumer is consulted all the way through the process as well. So we challenge client prejudices. Just because the client tells us that their consumer is one thing, if we research and find out it's something else, we present it to them. We present them with the truth. So instead of the client presenting safety, that is, the old adage was just give the client what they want, give them what they're used to, don't make waves. Now it's about forcing them to see the truth. That is, forcing them to have a breakthrough and see the truth of their brand. So our 5 points of planning, as we saw last week, we'll go through this in a second. It really aligns to our planning cycle. We need to get smart. So that is our research. We need to become instant experts on everything to do with the brand, the consumer, the competitors, and so forth. We need to get close and determine where the brand currently lives within the mindset of consumers and influencers. So this is where we're going to be using our qualitative and primary research. Get real, define what our objectives are, our market variables, and what we need to factor into coming up with our creative solutions. Get briefed, that is, we start articulating a brief to generate exciting ideas, and then we get better. Okay, so we evaluate our campaign, and then tinker with it and send it out again, and the cycle repeats itself. So we get smart, get close, get real, get briefed, and constantly getting better. So yep, first thing we do is get smart. As I said, we get smart about the brand, the consumer, and all known touch points. And I think I might have mentioned last week about Sherlock Holmes in the novels. Whenever he has a case, he empties the attic of his mind and he fills it up with everything relative to that particular case, right? So you've got to become an instant, if you're going to become an advocate for the brand and the consumer, you've got to become an expert on them. You've got to become an expert on their lives. You've become an expert on their brand. You've got to decode category conventions and caveats. Okay, so what's accepted about the category. So, for example, that's Coke is purely a party drink. Okay, it's not. Those of you who drink Coke don't just drink it because you're at a party. If ever, people use it as a mixer or as an energy drink, as a way to stay awake and for an energy hit. So again, you've got to break down the conventions and associations with it. You've also got to look at things like caveats. Okay, so one of the caveats associated with Coca-Cola is that it's not particularly good for you. Okay, so that, you know, its acids wear away your teeth, and yeah, it's not a particularly healthy drink. But that's why Coca-Cola advertising is just inherently emotional. So it's not about, you never push the rational choices for Coca-Cola. It's overwhelmingly emotive. Okay, music, happy people, party atmosphere, and that is meant to compensate for any of the caveats. The tools you use are worksheets and observations. So I'm going to show you these worksheets. They're very detailed. I don't expect you to answer all of them for your assignment, but if you choose to, you'll have a fairly comprehensive overview of what's involved with your brand and the consumer. Okay, so worksheets are these just key questions and provides a structure for you to dig down deep into the brand and the consumer. All right, so I won't read through all of these. I'll just give you a couple of examples. We've got a lot to get through, so you can read through these in your own time, but it's just a checklist that you can use if you like, of doing an in-depth survey of the brand to distill it down for your assignment. So we've got the typical worksheet questions for the business. What is the nature of the product or the service? How is the business structured? What's their corporate culture? What drives it? How is it manifested? In which channels of distribution or geographic markets is the brand most developed or underdeveloped? What are the most profitable items in their brand line or the portfolio? Questions about the brand. What's the origin of the brands? Okay, where did the name come from? Why did they actually choose it? All right, so that's important too. Why someone started the brand or named the brand in the first place can often give you the key to the brand essence. So, for example, not everyone knows this, but Nike is named after the Greek winged goddess of victory. Now, it doesn't matter. You could be brand loyal to Nike. You could have bought Nikes for years and not known that little fact. It doesn't necessarily impact on you as the consumer, but it certainly impacts on the corporate culture. So victory is the brand essence of Nike. Everything they do is victory, whether it's victory as an athlete, as a professional athlete, victory as an armchair athlete that you need to get your butt out of the couch and go for one lap around the block. That's a victory. Okay. Victory can be against inactivity. Victory can be over, a competitor, but that's the idea. And this is, and that's at the core of Just Do It. Just Do It is just get out there and win. Just get out there and train. Just get out there and make yourself a little bit fitter. But at the essence of Nike as a brand is the concept of victory, and it all comes back to the name. So how do we define the market in which the brand competes? Is it, if it's a holiday company, is it about travel? Is it about escape? Is it about life experiences? Okay, so what is the market that we're actually in? A guy that I know that's a travel consultant, their travel consultants don't call themselves travel consultants. They call themselves experience engineers. Okay, and that sounds a little bit over the top, a little bit wanky, but that's the way they see themselves. Okay, they're not just in the business of helping people book a holiday. They actually want you to have a life experience that you'll be excited about, that will enrich your life, and therefore will get you coming back to them to plan the next life experience. With who or what are we competing? Because of course, not all competitors, as we'll find out in subsequent lectures, are actual physical products. Sometimes it's an attitude. All right. So, for example, Nike might not just be competing against the idea of against Adidas, for example, or New Balance, or one of their major competitors. It might be their campaign might be about just the attitude that inactivity is better. Okay, by doing nothing. So again, the Just Do It campaign, Nike's brand essence of victory over inertia. It's about overcoming the idea that you can't do something. Okay, so you can have an attitude is a competitor as well as an actual physical competitor. How do the competitor products differ from their own? What are their features, their functionality, visions, values, etc.? Okay, so again, I won't read through them all. You get the idea. Then some typical worksheet questions about the consumer. Which consumers are driving volume? Who are these people in terms of demographics, their age, their gender, sex, their socioeconomics, their level of education? Do any other individuals have influence on the brand decision? Who are they and what influence do they have? Yeah, kids influence purchase of breakfast cereals, but guess what they found out a few years ago as well? That kids were having increasing influence on the car, okay, the choice of car, because kids were really plugged into the whole idea of technology. So they wanted to know, well, can I watch, is there a built-in device? Is there an iPad? Can I plug it in? So parents that weren't across, the latest technology were turning to their kids for input as well. From my own experience, my daughter was a huge factor in us choosing the color of our new car. So yeah, acknowledging that it's not just the purchase buyer, there's the people that are influencing them in some way, someone who's getting in their ear and having some kind of input into the purchase decision. What's the consumer like? And this is important. We talked about this in the tutorial. It's just not about how old someone is or how much money they make. It's really their psychology. What are their attitudes, their worldviews, their opinions? etc. Okay, because that really tells us more about what a person is. In the same way that, you know, I can see all of your wonderful faces here, but it's only by getting to talk to you do I know who you are as a person. Okay, I know what your character is. All right, so typical worksheet communications. What communications vehicles or marcoms has the brand been using up to this point? What's its share of voice? What's the trend heading towards? You know, is it worth using traditional television advertising, or should we be looking at digital or ambient or something like that? What have our past campaigns involved? What do consumers primarily remember about the brand's communications? Are they effective? Where do we want to be? What are our business goals? What's the vision and the mission of the company? How do we define the business we're in? Again, I won't go through all this. Get the idea. Okay, how will we get there? Other target groups. Yeah, okay. And there's some books you can read. So I won't go through them all. I'm getting quite hoarse, and I'd rather get to our research methods, because this is the really exciting stuff. All right. So this is point 2. This is getting close. This is using all our tricks and techniques and interesting insight mining methods to get into the heads of the consumers, to find out where we currently live within the minds of the consumers and their influencers. So it's about finding what people want, what's their motivation for buying a product, what are their desires, what are their fears. Okay, so this is the really cool stuff. And we use pre-search and research tools, and I'll be giving you different techniques tonight and exploring them. So pre-search is just early research. Before you kind of have an hypothesis, you know, it's really just doing a survey of everything. And that's where I start out with whenever I get a new client or a brand, okay? Especially if I'm completely unfamiliar with them. I absorb everything about it. Look at the website, look at the competitor's website. I'll read corporate reports. I'll do anything I can to soak in everything I can about the brand. Once I start to identify strategic direction, I might hone in on a particular aspect, okay, whether that's a consumer's spending habits, or what a consumer's thoughts on the economy, or anything like that. Okay, so pre-search is really about just taking in that convergent thinking, okay, bringing everything in together before you start honing in on a certain area and drilling down. All right, so then you can, when you start to get specific, you can start to use these tactics and techniques. All right, so I'll go through several of them, and I'll give you some examples. So first one's the brand personality profile, which was created by Jennifer Aker. Aker, I'm not really sure of the pronunciation. I've never met her. I don't think I will, so I don't think she'll be too insulted. So the idea here is Aker came up with 5 particular personality types, and then came up with a bunch of traits that comprise those types. And the idea here is that we need to, again, find the essence of a company, so that we can provide a consistent message. Okay, so you would find out from asking stakeholders, employees, consumers, suppliers, what they think are the key personality descriptors of the brand. Okay, so Aker broke it down into these 5 types. So sincerity, excitement, competence, sophistication, and ruggedness. All right, so these are the 5 core types, and then you delve down into, well, which one which trait or traits most exemplifies this concept, this type of sincerity. Okay, so for example, if we go to, if we have a look here, which one do you think, which brand personality type best exemplifies QUT? You can put it into chat, or you can speak up. Is it sincerity, excitement, competence? Good, excellent. Good stuff. Right. I'd say it's overwhelming one is competence. All right. And which one, which traits do you think exemplify it? Okay, if competence is their main one, okay, good. All right. Yeah. Now, depending on the advertisement or what the marketing, what the focus of the advertisement is, sometimes they do go a little bit more corporate, but certainly intelligent. Successful is one. If you look at the QT ads, whether it's someone who's a teacher in Singapore or someone who's a marketing executive in New York, or it is about that they're finding success as well. So certainly, yeah, I'd say intelligent and maybe successful would be a sub-trait within that one. Okay. Very good. And you can see even within that successful one, confidence. You know, all the QT graduates are stomping around like they own the world in whatever city they've been sent out to. Okay, so it's just a way to make sure that that our advertising reflects the perception that we have in the market, and that there's a consistency of that message. All right, so here's an example of several other brands. Okay, so sincerity, Disney falls into that category, Hallmark, Amazon, Cadbury, wholesome. Excitement, Tesla, Red Bull, Coke, Nike. Competence, Volvo, Google, Intel, Microsoft. Sophistication, Tiffany & Co, Rolex, Gucci, fashion brands, of course. Yeah, look, look, some of these are arguable. You could probably, depending on the campaign, slip Apple into excitement. I think, anyway. So again, some different brands that are kind of exemplified by certain brand personalities. All right, so that's a way to think about the brand. Is ask your target consumer, which of these, out of these types, which would you see exemplifies our brand? So good beer company, where does that fit into? Don't answer that because you want to write that into, you want to put that into your own assessment, or that's a question you want to ask the target consumer. But yeah, if you were doing a bit of, you know, a brand personality technique for good beer company, you'd ask your target consumer, which of these five personality types do you think best fits good beer company? And then which of these sub-traits best exemplifies the good beer company? All right. You could do a brand image photo sort. So you ask consumers to sort photos that correspond to their ideas of the brand image. So, you know, you get them a bunch of random things and ask them to sort them into things they see associates with that brand. So, you know, you might talk about Disney. All right. So what are some things you associate with Disney? You know, and they might pick pictures of happiness or children or laughter or magicians to do with magic or fairies or something like that. So whatever their associations are. Brand scripting. So this is about creating brand stories, and we'll devote a particular lecture later in the semester about brandscapes and storyscaping. But this is about creating brand stories. So bringing the brand through life through characters in a classic story. So you define the characters, and often, you know, the brand is a hero in it, or they might be a mentor figure as well. When we'll talk about the hero's journey and the way that quite often the consumer these days is the hero. They're the one that's going on a journey or a quest to find something, whatever that might be: peace, convenience, luxury, success. And then the brand is a kind of a mentor, an ally that helps them do it. The villain might be some kind of, you know, antagonistic force. So let's just say with Nike, they would help the person who wants to get a little bit fitter. And the villain in that case is a sense of apathy, or that they'll never get fit. Okay, so Nike comes along, and the idea is to create a story for the consumer that they can win, they can overcome, they can triumph. So yeah, you can like actually craft a plot. I'll show you in another lecture how Domino's used storyscaping and brand storytelling to redeem themselves, and they actually used a romantic comedy subplot to do that. So it's quite fascinating. All right, another thing you can do is use brand archetypes. So you need to have a think about what are some key, again, personality profile factors for archetypes. So those of you who have studied psychology or would be familiar with Carl Jung. So Jung used the theory of the archetype in his theory of the human psyche. So he believed that universal mythic characters reside within the collective unconsciousness of people, regardless of cultural or geographic boundaries. So there are certain archetypes that repeat themselves, and certain myths that repeat themselves over and over in culture. Every culture has a creation myth. Every culture has, you know, where do we go when we die myth. Every culture has a vampire myth, a dragon myth. There's some sort of like equation to that, but they also have different characters. Okay, so these archetypal characters represent fundamental human motifs of our experiences. So they connect with us very quickly, and they evoke deep emotions. So from an advertising perspective, this is how it works. Using archetypes helps us create instantly accessible characters or messages to help us make those brand stories and connect with the reader at a deep cultural and psychological level. And because they have instant meaning and significance, they help the readers connect with the brand and engage emotionally with it. Okay, and it helps simplify, again, complex things. Okay, complex knowledge of a brand into a simple, accessible character or concept. Okay, so it also helps us give a consistency of brand character, as the same way ACCA's personality does, and message according to archetype. So I've just given a couple of little examples of those archetypes in films, just to help you connect to those as well. So have a think about, I'll show you some in a minute, but as we go through, have a think about some brands that might connect to this. So yeah, although there's many different types of archetypes, Jung defined 12 primary archetypes that symbolize basic human motivations and needs. So first one is the innocent, that is the traditionalists, the naive, the romantic, and the dreamer. Their core desire is to get to paradise. Their goal is to be happy. Their strategy is to do things right. But their weakness is that they can be quite boring because they're often very innocent and good. Okay, so can you think of any brands you think might fall into that category? Anyone want to have a go? That's the innocent. That's very good, Adrian. Very good. Perfect. All right. Yeah, Dove could fall into that. Dove could fall into another, a couple of other ones as well. Some of them will have crossover. I think Nestle is a really good example of that. Johnson, yeah, good. Okay, yeah, all those really sort of like old school traditional brands. Very good. Nice. All right, what about the orphan? The regular guy or girl, the every man or woman. Okay, so their goal is to connect with others, to belong. Their strategy is to develop solid virtues, have the common touch, be down to earth, and their weakness is to lose oneself in effort to blend in for the sake of superficial relationships. Any of those? Yep, good. Coles tries not to push it too much. VB also does that. Okay, the common touch. What about the hero? The warrior, the crusader, the rescuer, the dragon slayer, the champion, the winner. Um, Nike, good, excellent, good, nice. GoPro could also fit into another one, which we'll get to in a second. Good stuff. Very good. All right. What about the caregiver? To protect and care for others, to help others. Compassion and generosity being exploited. Yep, Amy, that's a good one. Huggies, nice. I think Dove could possibly fall into that category as well. Okay, the explorer, the seeker, the iconoclast, the wanderer, the individualist, the pilgrim. Yeah, GoPro could fall into that one. Good, Ford. Land Rover. North Face, excellent. Good, good, Adrian. That was really cool. Okay, what about the rebel, the revolutionary, the wild woman, the misfit, the iconoclast? Yeah, they can have multiple archetypes, but generally you try to fit it just into one. They can have category in the same way that they can have different aspects of a personality, but it's more about just honing into one so that you can have a consistency to the message. Yeah, I think Harley Davidson would also fit into that one as well. Some good ones there. Excellent. All right. The lover, the partner, the friend, the intimate, the sensualist. They want intimacy and experience, passion. Very nice. Lint, good. That's a really good one. Nice. What about the creator, the artist, the inventor, the musician, the writer, the dreamer? Apple, I knew it was going to come up. It's top of mind for me as well. Okay, they've really owned that, haven't they? What about the jester, the fool, the trickster, the joker, the practical joker? To have a good time and lighten up the world. Good, Pixar Solo, very good. Snickers. Yeah, I guess you could say that we've compared the market because they're just so offbeat with their, not that they're a jokey product, but they kind of have tried to make, Carlsberg, good stuff. What about the sage, the expert, the scholar, the detective, the advisor, seeking out information and knowledge? University of Queensland, Grammarly, good. Google, excellent, nice. Open Universities Australia. Don't know if I should be mentioning competitors. Good, very nice. Okay, what about the magician, the visionary, the inventor, the leader, the shaman? All about vision, making dreams come true. Tesla, great. Honda. I don't know what ClickFunnels is. Okay, the ruler, the boss, the aristocrat, the king, the queen, the politician, the manager. It's all about control, exercising power. Hermes, good, very nice. Mercedes-Benz, Jaguar, yeah, a lot of luxury brands. Nice, very good. Okay, so there's a bunch here. Let's see what we think about these. There's Sage. Oh, some of you had some of these. Very nice. So there's a Google for Sage, Haagen-Dazs, or some kind of getting intimate, not with ice cream. Caregiver, insurance, of course. Connector, eBay. Different names for different archetypes, but you can. They equate to different ones. The pragmatist, the leader, Sky, the hero, the rebel. Yep. The magician, Lynx. Well, I guess if you can score action when you're wearing Lynx, then you are a magician. Um, Idealist, there you go. The Creator, Dyson, Explorer. Okay, we had some of these. So yeah, excellent. So again, just ways you can think about how people perceive you and the way you should behave. So you have consistency in your message. So we use this also in screenwriting. We use archetypes to make sure that characters behave within a certain way that's expected and connects with the reader or viewer. Because if people act out of character, out of archetype, then people think that they're not psychologically true. So again, it's all about creating a consistency. It's playing up to this image that we have, but we have to make sure that there's a truth there as well. Okay, some other tactics. Well, you can have visualization. Okay, so show similar to our photo exercise before, expose consumers to pictures of people with emotional reactions. Okay, and ask them to select ones they associate with the product category or the brand. Okay, so if you see someone looking broody or sexy or happy, which facial expression, and therefore which feeling do you associate with our brand? This is a really cool one, and in fact, this is a really common creative way. Have consumers imagine a brand has come to life. Imagine if the brand was an animal, what kind of animal would it be? If it was a Hollywood actor, what would it be? If it was a musical artist, who would they be? Okay, if it was a color, what would it be? Okay, so the more you can sort of like relate to something that's in the pop cultural atmosphere, then you'll be able to like find images or words or sounds or soundtracks that then will speak to the consumer that will remind them of the brand. This is a really cool one too, and I think we might be doing it in tutorials. I think I have put that in as one of the workshops. It's where you create a personal profile of the brand as if it was actually a person, and then you either write a kind of a bio of their life from birth to death, or you kind of write it as an obituary of their funeral. And it's kind of imagining what did they contribute to the world? What were the good things about them? What were the bad things? But again, it makes them personal. It makes them human. It humanizes the brand or the product and you start to find personality descriptors, or images. Or again, if you can imagine them as a person, you start to invest a brand with a personality or a soul. Okay, and personalities make you feel things, and you can relate to humans. You can't relate to an abstract brand. And that's the job of what creative advertising does. It injects brands and products with a soul, with a personality that doesn't exist, that has nothing to do with their product features. It creates, an image. You can use brand mapping. Okay, so you start to create clusters of products with similar brands. So if we're doing burgers, is Hungry Jack's closer to grilled than it is to McDonald's, for example? Where does it sit in relation to Betty's Burgers or In-N-Out Burger or something like that? So where do people, what are the clusters and associations they see, and why do they see those things? Okay, so if Hungry Jack's is closer to grilled, what is it? Well, it's because the perception is that they're fresher and more flame grilled, or they're healthier or something like that. I'm not saying that's the case, but that's just an example. You can get people to make collages as well. So you give people, they can either do it digitally, of course, not many people have magazines these days, but this is a technique. You give people a bunch of magazines, and I know it seems like something from kindergarten, but again, it's creative, and it's getting people to respond to images and feelings and association rather than dry facts and asking survey questions. So you get people to actually make a collage up of, this is what I think of Nike, this is what I think of Cadbury, okay? And then they create these pictures, and then you have to interpret and ask them questions about it. So you're getting to, again, the emotional responses to them rather than these sort of like dry academic responses. You can have complaint sessions, and I will show you in a second. After I go through these tactics and techniques, I'll show you some campaigns that exemplify some of this, where you find out problems that people have with the brand, and that can actually turn it into something really powerful. And that's what Domino's did. They had their redemptive arc through asking consumers what they thought about their product, and consumers absolutely trashed Domino's, and so that that led them to coming up with a really great campaign that got them back on track. I'll show you that in a second. Deprivation, again, this is a really interesting technique. Ask consumers to imagine or even experience what life would be like without that brand. How does it impact on their life? How do they actually feel? Okay, and again, the Got Milk campaign came from that, and I'll show you that one in a second. How will it affect them in their point of view? Again, by depriving someone of something, it makes them think, well, what have I lost in my life? And loss, whether it's frustration or grief or irritation, there's a feeling, and then they can tell you, well, what is it? Get them to reflect on what the product actually did for them and how it made their life better by taking it away in the first place. You can also do this observation, venture into consumers' natural habitats to observe and record how, when, and why they use the product. So, if it wasn't COVID time, you could actually go into a bar and watch people drink beer. Okay, don't do it in a creepy way, but you can actually observe the way people want beers. When I worked as a bartender, I had a great insight into the way people interact with expensive beers. People didn't want you to pour it into a glass. So quite often that's what you do in a restaurant. You take a beer, you pour it into a glass. But I noticed that a lot of patrons were saying, for certain beers, please don't pour it into a glass. The bottle's fine. Okay. And I got to the bottom of it, which was once you pour a certain type of beer into a glass, it looks like any other beer. So certain paler beers look exactly like any other. You pour a darker lager or a stout or a porter to something, it looks instantly like a craft beer. There's a certain color of beers that just look like fairly homogenous. And so, well, why pay $10 or $15 for that beer when I can actually show to people what the beer is, and I'm cool because I drink this beer. Okay, I know that seems silly, but that's what people really wanted. They wanted people to see that they'd bought this beer and they could afford it, and they're cool because they're drinking it. They would never in a million years admit to that. Okay, so that's the kind of interpretation you have to do. That's why, and that's why labels are important. They've worked that out with craft beers as well. If people aren't beer experts, it's kind of like wine bottles. People will pick by the label, and I don't know if anyone does that here. Anyone want to admit to that? If you're not knowledgeable about wine and varieties and all that kind of stuff and vineyards, people tend to pick wine by the name and the label. And it's the same with craft beers. People go in, and if they don't want to seem ignorant, so they just like look at a badge on the beer and they'll go, oh, that subconsciously, that looks really cool. I'll have that one. I'll have the one that looks nice. So it's very important and that's why there's so much that goes into labels and graphic design for alcohol. What else? Okay, free association. Yeah, so ask consumers to think of objects, songs, artwork, paintings, anything that they associate with the brand. Okay, so it's just top of mind. It's word association. Again, these techniques come directly from behavioral science, from psychology, from therapy. Vox pop interviews, so just stop people on the street and ask them top of mind questions. Please don't do this for your assessment. We don't want to get complaints from people. Photo journal, so ask people to take pictures of the product, how they use it, when they use it. Again, that gives you a fairly accurate record of how they use the product. Place the product with the consumers and have them return to discuss the experiences. Okay. Again, you're just using emotional, open-ended language to talk about it rather than asking yes or no questions. Okay. Rather than saying, did you use the product? Yes. Did you enjoy it? Yes. All right. That tells you nothing. Okay. So get them to tell you the story about the product. You'll hear words and phrases and associations that you couldn't possibly have gotten from them from a closed yes or no question. Again, ask consumers to place products in groups. So does this wine go with that car, and does that go with that pair of shoes? Okay. To study, their perceptions about the brand and what other types of products they might put them with. Sentence completion, again, comes straight from psychology. When I can't use my iPhone, I feel. Okay. And then they fill in those questions. Shadowing, again, this can be a bit creepy. So observe consumers out of home interacting with their product. Show and tell, have respondents bring pictures, products, examples, and the topic being discussed to a focus group for review. So again, getting people to do the talking themselves rather than you feeding them or leading them with questions. This is, and get people to draw. It doesn't have to be stick figures. You can give them crayons. You can give them paints, finger paints. It doesn't really matter. You've got to get people creatively expressing their feelings about a product, and then ask them, well, what's the meaning of that? Why did you choose that color? But you can even, make deductions. Give them a bunch of crayons. Draw me a picture of Jeep, and straight away they're using greens or grays or whatever, and you can start to think, oh, well, they associate it with nature or, with very masculine colors or whatever it is. And then thematic apperception is having consumers complete a story that's been told by a moderator with the help of a visual aid. So they might just show someone using the product, what do you think happens after this? Okay. Someone wears our deodorant. Do you think they're going to be lucky in love as a result? Or what do you think is going to happen next? Okay, there's a bunch of things I won't run through now. You can just read through that in your own time. So just to exemplify some of the things I've just been talking about, I'll show you a couple of campaigns that come from various studies. Okay, so where are we now? Sorry, I'll just bring up my... Okay, can you just remind me, did I actually show the Got Milk campaign last week? I know I thought about using it. Did I show it to you, the Michael Bay one? No, I showed you a few. No one can remember. I'll show it to you again then. You can't recall it. Okay, just hold on. All right, so sorry, I've just got too many windows open now. I'm trying to get back to you. All right, there you are. All right, so I'll show you the original Got Milk campaign. Now, this is an example of what I've been talking about the last couple of weeks, that people don't always give away the true reasons why they do something. So you've got to go looking for it. So the Got Milk campaign's been running for, I don't know, gosh, maybe, I don't know, 30 years, maybe more. This is the original campaign. So originally when people were, they were trying to think how to increase people's consumption of milk, people would say, they'd be asked, why do you drink milk? And people, the first level reaction they would tell them is to get healthy, but, to get stronger bones, because it's part of a balanced diet, all this kind of stuff. But in doing actual research through focus groups, through ethnographic studies where they put cameras in people's homes, through deprivation studies, all the kind of techniques we talked about before, well, not all of them, but some of them, they got to the truth of what people really use milk for. And Americans were using it to wash down cookies and cakes and muffins and all the naughty food. So despite what they told you on one level, okay, if you ask them, why do you drink milk? To be healthy, for strong bones, for nutrition, for calcium. That's not true. Deeper studies revealed that they used it to wash down naughty treats, okay? So that's the truth of it. So the insight was that Americans use milk to wash down naughty treats, and they feel frustrated because they turn it into feelings. So how do you feel when you've run out of milk? And this is where got milk came from. When you haven't got milk, how do you feel? And that was a phrase that kept coming up in these studies. When I haven't got milk, this happens. When I haven't got milk, I feel frustrated. Geez, I hate it when I haven't got milk and I need to wash down my cake and my cookie. All right. And so that became the insights that drove the big idea of the got milk commercial. So the big idea in the early commercials were to present someone in the ad eating a treat, cookie, cake, etc., but then encountering the problem of not being able to wash it down because they've run out of milk. So they dramatized something that was relatable and resonant to the target market. And the Got Milk campaign was a massive success because, lo and behold, they're reflecting what the true reason why people actually use the product and what they were feeling at the time. Okay, so let's take a look at the original ad. And this is a bit of trivia for those of you who like such things. This was directed by Michael Bay. He was an ad director before he went on to make Transformers movies and a bunch of other action films.
And that was the Vienna Wood Dance in B, one of my all-time favorites. And now let's make that random call with today's $10,000 question. It's a tough one. Who shot Alexander Hamilton in that famous duel? All right, let's go to the phones and see who's out there. Hello, for $10,000. Who shot... Excuse me? I'm afraid your time is almost up. I'm sorry, maybe next time. Got milk.
There you go. And let's take a look at another campaign. Okay, so again, this is this demonstrates they can have the same insight that people get frustrated when they haven't got milk to wash down treats. You can have the same big idea that let's show people that when you haven't got milk, things go wrong, and but the execution is different. So this is a slightly different tone, very different execution of that big idea. But the strategy is the same, the insight is the same, and the big idea or the concept, key concept of the campaign is the same.
Stop.
What?
Stop. The cake. Whatever.
All right, and I'll share another one that came from a complaint session. Okay, so this is the infamous Domino's pizza turnaround that came as a result of them asking consumers what they thought of Domino's and not getting the answers they really wanted or expected, but the answers they needed to hear. So we'll take a look at that case study.
There comes a time when you know you've got to make a change. You know, you can't lead a company like this unless you love food. I love food. I love pizza. It was about 50 years ago that they started the first store just about 5 miles from here.
Two brothers had a great idea, and they also said they wanted to get it delivered within 30 minutes, and that's something that no one said could be done. In fact, the first pizza delivery vehicle for our company is that vehicle right there. Around the 80s, we were exploding. We were the fastest growing company in the history of franchise business. Nothing had ever grown like that.
Now we're almost 9,000 restaurants around the world. We love what we do at Domino's.
Pizza, where's the love? How hard? Bread, sauce, cheese, fresh ingredients. Doesn't feel like there's much love in Domino's pizza.
Domino's pizza crust to me is like cardboard.
Is it hard to watch this stuff?
Yeah, it's hard to watch.
I hear what some folks are saying about our stuff.
Oh, this one's bad. Worst excuse for pizza I've ever had.
The sauce tastes like ketchup.
Totally void of flavor.
You know what? When you first hear it, it's shocking.
The cardboard complaint is the most common one.
This we hear over and over and over.
I mean, that hits you right in the heart. This is what we've done. This is what I've done, you know, for 25 years now.
You can either use negative comments to get you down, or you can use them to excite you and energize your process of making a better pizza. We did the latter.
Most companies hide the criticism that they're getting, and we actually faced it head on.
Some people didn't get us credit for the taste of our product. That's what we're fixing.
We listen to our consumers, and they want us to be better, and we want them to be happier. We want people to love our pizza.
This is what's driving us. This is what's lit the fire under us. This is what's making us want to get better.
Who are we?
It's been crazy down here. We had our best chefs working hard to find the best combination, looking at 10 crust types, 15 sauces, dozens of cheeses.
You can't just add a little salt or add a little something to the recipe. I mean, we basically had to start over with a new recipe.
And they were working day and night and weekends to get it done.
You know, this is Roxanne. She's one of the lead chefs for pizzas, and she's constantly trying new stuff, and she's saying, try this and try that. You know, the day she put this in front of me, I said, dang, this is a real deal.
We changed everything. The crust, the sauce, the cheese. Now it tastes better.
We started working on the cheese.
We've got shredded cheese.
Cheese. It's cheese.
It's tastier. When you smell it, it's got an aroma to it. I mean, this is what cheese should be.
We started working on the sauce.
New sauce is bright. It's spicy. It's robust.
We've got garlic in here, we've got oregano, we've got basil, we've got and a little bit of red pepper just to tingle on your tongue.
It's a bold flavor.
When you bite into that, that's what pizza sauce should taste like.
We started working on the crust.
A nice, rich, buttery crust with some garlic and some herbs in there.
It gives it a nice finish for you. Great taste from the first bite to the last bite on every single slice.
Now we got great food, we've earned the swagger, right? We're going to do an end zone dance on this one. I can't wait to have people try it. And it's not even about being right, it's about us having great food.
No, it's about us being right. And you know, I can't wait for Adrian to try our new pizza.
So I think he's going to be surprised.
We're going to bring her the new pizza, see how she likes it. She has no idea we're coming. Adrienne?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll see part two, or watch a little bit of part two, just to kind of like see how they followed it up, and we'll chat.
I'm Alex Berman, and you're watching $6 on how they turned around.
That's not what I wanted. It's all right. Anyway, you can hunt down part two. What happens in part two of the case study is they knock on the door and they find all the people that criticize them in the case studies, and lo and behold, they love the new pizza. All right, so then they went and turned that into a campaign where they filmed the reactions and they told the entirety of America that they know that people have fallen out of love with Domino's. They know they've let them down, but they've revamped their entire menu. They've made good with these people that were saying all these terrible things about them, and they basically prostrated themselves in front of the nation and said, come back and love us. So using that complaint session to facilitate a major change also led to them coming up with the turnaround campaign. The Domino's turnaround was a really successful campaign for them. And they kind of used a story essence, a story branding exercise where they looked at what are the patterns in popular culture that people resonate with. So it's kind of like coming up, the concept of brand archetypes, but also archetypes of stories. And what they used was the romantic comedy template. All right. So you probably watched romantic comedies before. Tell me what happens in a romantic comedy. What's the pattern of a romantic comedy? Boy meets girl, then there's a happy end. Good. Okay. What happens in the middle? This is the crucial thing. Conflict. Why? What happens? There's a struggle. Good. Excellent. All right. So there's a struggle. And most often in a romantic comedy as well, there's some kind of misunderstanding or a breakup. Okay. And the person, one of the people in the couple generally has to do something at the end to win back the person who feels they've been wronged, who feels, feels they've been misunderstood or whatever. So grand gesture. Excellent. Very good. Okay. The grand gesture, that's part of it. So the grand gesture is often in a romantic comedy, some kind of public humiliation. Okay. So if you think of a romantic comedy where someone bursts into a church or stumbles into a party and in front of everyone humiliates themselves. Yes. Holds a radio in the rain, plays a guitar on stage in front of people when they can't sing. There's usually some kind of public humiliation. And then the person realizes, oh, you've humiliated yourself publicly for me. You must love me. You're good. I will come back to you. That's the pattern of the romantic comedy. And it worked. And also that, Americans especially love a good redemption story. They love it. And so, you can make a mistake, but if you apologize, and make a big spectacle of yourself, there's a chance at forgiveness. And that's what Domino's did. So they admitted to the mistake. They humiliated themselves publicly. Look what we've done. And then people swarmed back to them. So it was a really good success for them. Again, just using, left of center, unusual marketing techniques to actually get where they need to be. All right. Hopefully this is the right one. Okay, cool. All right. Oh, sorry. Go back to the previous slide. All right. So now we're up to point 3, getting real. Okay. So this is where we start to define our objectives and analyzing what constitutes our brand essence. So what are the elements, our features, our benefits, the consequences of using our products as far as, how a product makes our consumer feel, and then drilling down to come up with a 1 or 2 phrase that helps us understand what, if you take away the complexities of the augmented brand, what is the essence of our brand that should be at the heart of every single communication. So you can actually do this process, the brand essence workshop or the brand laddering exercise. So it's just to devise a clear and singular brand essence that should be reflected in every single communication. And these are the things we do. We come up with what are the attributes associated with the brand, okay? What are, the features or the uses of the product? What are the benefits? And as we discussed in the early tutorial, you've got to convert features into benefits. So what is the good that it actually does for them? Okay, so the fact that a product is low fat isn't really a benefit, it's a feature. The benefit is that they can enjoy the snack and not feel guilty, or they can, you know, or it helps complement their new active lifestyle. So it's you've got to take a product fact and then convert that into the benefit or the good that it does for the consumer, whether that good is physical, psychological, mental. Our consequences are the feelings associated with the brand, and I guess the feelings associated with the benefits that it provides. What are the common brand symbols we associate it, and what's the brand personality? Some words to describe the brand personality, and then see if there's a clear through line that discovers that drills down to all of this. There's a worksheet question. So what are the attributes of the brand? A unique product, feature, or service. What are the benefits we get from consuming or using the product? What are the consequences? How does it make us feel? What place and role does it play in the user's life? What are our brand symbols, the brand personality, and the brand essence? So if we look at something like Disney, all right? So, Disney's a classic brand. But if you shrink everything down to what it actually does, it's about magical entertainment, and that's at the heart of everything. So, and that keeps the branding on track. So you will not see an advertisement or a TV show or a movie that is a kind of a social realist drama. You just won't see it in Disney because that's not the core brand. It doesn't matter. You know, Disney's got a very diverse pop cultural offering as far as animation and sitcom and stuff for kids, stuff for adults. Some of it's science fiction, some of it's fantasy, some of it's very fairy tale-y, but it's all got this feeling of heightened reality. Even their sitcoms are very over the top. If you ever watched an episode of Hannah Montana or That's So Raven or any of those kinds of ones, they're very heightened. So there's an essence of magic and unreality in all of their stuff, and it is all about happiness, bringing happiness as well. If you look at something like Dove, you reduce everything down. If you step through the brand laddering through that, it comes down to truth or reality. Okay, especially in relation to beauty, and of course that's exactly what they push in their branding, real beauty. Hallmark is all about creating memories or recognizing life events. So that's got to be at the core of everything that Hallmark does, marking great events in your life. Then we come to our deliverables. What do we need to actually deliver in our campaign? So what's the challenge? What is the problem that we need to overcome? Who or what is the primary target audience? What are the key insights? What's the engaging proposition that we can offer them? What's the offer that we can make them that's going to make them connect with their key insight and their perception of the brand? And what is the task that we actually have to do? What do we have to convince, persuade, inform them about? Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at in tonight's shoots. Those of you who did the Jaffers exercise has already done a kind of a creative strategy for Jaffers, and those in the later shoot will do one tonight. Okay, so who are we talking to? What do we need to say to them? What's a key insight into their behavior that we can make the benefit or the offer meaningful? And how will we achieve it? Okay, so who's the key consumer? What's their desire, want, or need in life and in relation to the brand? How are they empowered by information? How can we actually reach them? What are their choices or alternatives? That is, what are their competitors? Okay. And as I said before, it can be an attitude as well, not just a physical competitor. How do they research the brand or the product or the service? Okay, what media are they using to find out about us? Are they using social media? Are they getting their information from TV, Spotify? Where's it coming from? And what insight does this consumer review provide? What are those insights? What is the single-minded brand essence? What is that single-minded way that the consumer thinks or feels about us? And what elements of the product or the service make it unique? What is distinctive about it that makes it different from our competitors that we feel that will only connect with the consumer? What's our core proposition or our offer? What is it at the heart of our communication that we need to impart to the consumer? And there's an acronym that I always ask on behalf of the consumer, WIFFM. What's in it for me? Okay, that's what people want to know when they see an ad. Okay, at the core of everything, what am I going to get out of this? Okay, and is it meaningful to me? Where is the innovative opportunity? What territory does this idea exist in? Okay, does it exist in their current lifestyle? Is it in their idealized lifestyle? And how does the brands and product deliver support for this idea? Why do we believe it? And that's why we put a support statement into our creative strategy statement. It's one thing to claim a brand can do it, but unless there's something in the product facts or features that allows us to convince the consumer that the brand can do it, or maybe it's in our advertising. Maybe our advertising creates permission to believe that a product will deliver something to them. Okay, so there's nothing inherently in Chanel No. 5 that's going to make someone sexy. There's no sort of like, sexy molecule they put in there. But the advertising allows us to believe that there's an association where Chanel No. 5 be sexy. Next is what is the task? So this is mapping out our communication requirements. What are our media channels? What are the ones going to reach the target consumer? What's the combination of the marcoms that we'll use to reach them? All right, then finally we get briefed. We actually write our brief. And I know I've been talking a lot tonight. You can probably hear my voice croaking from it. So yeah, we'll give you a couple of exercises over the next few weeks for writing briefs and creative strategy worksheets, which make a good brief. But yeah, this is putting it all down succinctly. What do we need to achieve? So the brief is where things start for creatives. Part of the planning process, input from creatives, from account executives, and from the client as well. So we distill, there's a lot of distillation, taking complex things and turning them into simple, digestible documents. The objective is to distill into a single document the essence of what we want to communicate. So by its name, it has to be brief. Okay, so we might have an appendices of lots and lots of research, but we need that one document that distills it all down. In the tutorial tonight, you'll be learning to write a creative strategy statement. That is, even when you filled out, 1 or 2 pages of a creative strategy worksheet, we distill it down into a simple, digestible, clear statement. Okay. So some questions. Yeah, what can we filter out to make the briefing session single-minded and focused? What do we need to emphasize or accent? Does all relevant thinking exist as one key document, right? Are all key points well defined? What can we do to stimulate thinking? Anyway, we'll go into that next week. Next week's more about briefing and articulating a creative strategy. And the final part is evaluation, okay? Asking questions. So a checklist, does it appear the idea worked? And of course, to find that out, you have to go to the source and ask the consumer what they like, what they didn't like, what do you recall, what do you remember, what feelings do you have associated with the campaign, what can be improved for next time? I think that's about it. What were the reasons for success or failure? What have we learned? Where could we do next? Okay, and we repeat the planning cycle after that. But the last 2 points we'll be spending a couple of lectures on in future weeks. I think my voice is about to give out, so I might have to skip out. I don't know if we're over time. Oh, no, we're under time. That's okay. I think my voice is about to go. I'm actually battling a crippling headache and a sore throat tonight, so I apologize for any vagueness and croakiness, but some of you might find it, a little erotic. Just with our last 10 minutes of the lecture tonight, last week I asked you to look at some trends, and some of you sent me a couple of your trends and insights. Would anyone like to share it with the class? Richard, you sent me one. That was really cool. Would you like to share it with not Richard Zhao, Richard Brooking, I think your name is. Sorry if I've forgotten your last name. Oh, great. Thanks. Anyone else spot a trend? Who was it who sent me the observation about the economic trend that people just aren't spending money anymore, that people are bunkering down and finding ways to save money? And so the brand growth idea was, you know, of making more sort of self-help channels. Okay, making self-help, a series of self-help videos on how to do things cheaply. So there could be a rise in those kinds of things, life hacks to do things cheaper and save yourself. Oh, great! Thanks very much, Diana. Did you want to talk to the class and explain that in a little bit more detail than I did? Nope. There you go. Anusha says, brands are consciously becoming green to target green consumers, which is primarily Gen Z. Okay, the trend working from home. Okay, good. It was interesting, like, again, to see the brands over especially during the majority of the COVID lockdown that just absolutely took off. You know, Mr. Bezos, with the double or triple his wealth over the point of lockdown. Who would have thought, you know, a takeaway and Uber Eats just skyrocketed? You know, you would have thought people would have bunkered down and, you know, started cooking for themselves, but no, they went for a takeaway. So kind of looking ahead to how you can capitalize on trends. So, for example, you know, a few years ago, people got into investing into laser tattoo removal because, you know, there was peak ink on people a few years ago, and they realized, well, that's going to be something that will eventually decline, and so people set out tattoo laser removal. Something with COVID, the fact that people have been eating a lot of takeaway, although people have been exercising a lot more. But maybe there's going to be, you know, some sort of like ability to leverage on providing better nutrition or healthier takeaway or something like that. Okay, good. Yep, lots of good trends identified. Yeah, that's great. So okay, so we've got trend working from home, a fashion brand pushing for a campaign for dressing up at home. Fantastic. Excellent. Home couture. Very nice. So it's a matter of not just identifying a trend, but what is an idea that could come from that trend. So, you know, the no plastic straws, what's something there? Is it, you know, straws made out of something else, or is it about, maybe it's a way of rethinking why we use straws in the first place. I mean, who uses straws? Largely, it's children and a lot of, I hate to stereotype or, you know, to fall into cliche, but often females use straws so they don't sort of like get their lipstick smeared all over glasses and stuff like that. So maybe you could come up with, you know, maybe it's time for a smear-free lipstick, you know, or maybe you'll find some kind of brand growth idea that would come from that. If the trend is, you know, there's no straws in clubs anymore, and well, what can you do to help someone who might be worried about smearing their lipstick or losing their lipstick? So trying to find that psychological insight and come up with an idea that solves a problem. You go, clothes tailored specifically to your size, better size guide. I train to embrace all body types. Cool, very good. All right, so there's some excellent trends there. All right, but that's what I want you to do as I was talking tonight, is not just identify a situation or a problem, but try and think of, well, what's an insight into the way people are thinking, behaving, or feeling, that then you could then turn that into a brand growth idea and come up with a product or a product use that helps solve that problem. Yeah, cool. Well, you know, for example, the Zoom trend. So BBC got in on this for their marketing. It's when Zoom backgrounds, when people realized they could customize their Zoom backgrounds, BBC put out a bunch of Zoom backgrounds that were from their iconic TV shows. So you could be in Doctor Who's TARDIS, or in the Downton Abbey drawing room or something like that. So it was a great way to, get their product out to a lot of people. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, well, that's great. Well, thank you very much for sharing that. Again, I know there's a lot of information. I'm probably overwhelmed with a lot of stuff tonight. And as I said, my throat and my head is not up to even propelling all this stuff at you. So, hats off to you for getting through it. If there's anything you want to ask about the lecture material, of course, send me an email. I have my weekly consults from 2 to 4. Just email ahead of time, and I'm happy to have a chat to you and step through anything there. Other than that, have a great night, and I'll see you next week, and or in the tutorial at 9 o'clock. So I'm going to quickly grab something to eat, grab some Aspro, and see you in the tute at 9 o'clock. Cool. Have a great night.